All right. Hello, everyone. JMac here. Another Wednesday live stream. Just finishing up some coffee. I was reading about this job batching because I actually haven't had the opportunity to use this before. It's something I had come into, gosh, a while back. I guess I think it was introduced in like maybe Laravel 6, maybe even earlier. You think it'd be something with all the jobs that Shift kicks off that it would use job batching, but I actually haven't had a need because again, a lot of the Shift, workers are all just kind of individual. There's no reason for me to batch up a bunch of jobs, but I think I'm gonna have a quote unquote need for it today. So let me jump over to PHP Storm and we're just gonna kind of like scratch pad. I think I've got some old stuff in here maybe. Yeah. Let's just kind of scratch pad out like what I'm gonna do here, what I'm trying to do. So Shift has kind of reached a point where during releases, for example, the Laravel 9 release back in February or the Laravel 10 release next January or February, whenever that might be, Shift gets a lot of traffic, but pretty much any other time of the day or any other time of the year, Shift's not necessarily getting a lot of traffic. And right now I have a couple dedicated workers that are just kind of out there listening and waiting. They're like $10 a month, $15 a month, whatever. They're not necessarily that expensive. One shift pays for the queue. But I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to do something a bit more dynamic. Again, I don't necessarily need to, so I've called, Yagni on this for 5, 6, 7 years now. But with the things like the workbench, which are kind of a la carte runs of Shift, those are getting used more. The weekly automation now that subscribers or subscriptions are more common or more prevalent. There's people in there that are subscribing. For example, Titan is a subscriber to a Shifty plan, and they might have 20, 30, 40 repos that are getting run. So the automation for that, for weekly automation when Laravel tags a new release, is hundreds, if not thousands, of repositories that suddenly are kind of influxing into the queue. And again, these workers are there and ready to handle the load, but maybe they take 2-3 hours to process those thousands of jobs, right? Now again, there's all sorts of different ways you can do this, but right now I have just some dedicated workers that are out there. They can scale up a little bit with processes, but the nature of Shift, it's a little bit CPU intensive, so I can really only run a couple of processes per box. So again, there's limits. Now, of course, I could go buy a $100 a month box and maybe I could run 20 processes on it, but I was kind of playing with the numbers in an Excel spreadsheet, and anyway, let's get to the point here. I was kind of playing with the numbers, and it makes more sense for me to actually spawn up a larger worker for maybe the hour that I might need it, because again, once that automation's done, I don't really need it again until Laravel tags another release, which happens weekly. And maybe a couple times a week if there's a patch release. But again, that's pretty rare. It happens on Tuesdays, right? It's not every Tuesday, so I can't just say, oh, on Tuesday, spin up a box. It needs to be a bit more dynamic. So that's what we're trying to do today. So at a high level, what we're trying to do today is basically, spawn new, I'll just get a little specific here, digital ocean servers to add workers on demand. All right, and I'll just kind of quote on demand. So this is really all of what I was just kind of building up. This is what we're going to try to do here. So this is kind of the high level premise. Again, there are different ways to do this. I could go get on maybe SQS or something else that maybe manages this scale a little bit easier for me. But again, Shift is pretty unique. It needs certain things on the box. It doesn't use just PHP or Laravel. Like it uses, Perl and Python and system level commands like grep that are just kind of specific over the years. It can't necessarily use BSD, Unix. It has to use, GNU or whatever. So there are just some things, some nuances in there. That's why I don't really want to move. I need to kind of cater this server. I can spin up servers pretty quickly because I have images for them, but I've kind of curated those a bit over the years. So again, horizontal scalers out there might be a little annoyed with that. But again, it's just what it is. I kind of tweak these boxes a bit instead of just spinning up a generic box and letting it run. And so that's kind of why I've stuck with DigitalOcean. So again, there might be other alternatives. If you're watching this, definitely check those out based on your needs. But Shift kind of has very specific needs. I'm comfortable with DigitalOcean. I've been with them since the beginning. And I'm happy to spin up, a $10 box with them for an hour and have this work. So that's kind of the goal. So here's what I'm going to work on, and I think this is probably going to be a part 1 and part 2. So again, forgive kind of the lengthy intro here, but what I want to do is basically create a job to create a new DO server from image. All right. And then, so that's kind of at a high level. And then we're going to need a job. I was kind of reading the docs. We're going to go look at this here in a minute. But I was in advance. I was looking at the DigitalOcean API references, and basically this is going to return like a 201, like, hey, I'm processing your request, right? So I'm going to need to have another job that checks the status of the new image, and then finally, basically once live, spawn other jobs. Now, this may or may not be the case, but what I'm thinking for these two things is basically the technical implementation here is kind of like a batched job, right? Or job batch, I guess, is what Laravel kind of calls those. So I think there's going to be an opportunity here. And now this, because it's listening, this is going to have retries with backoff, job backoff. And so, for example, this is going to create that. It's going to give me a 201. It's going to batch down to the next job, which is now going to start checking the server. And this may fail because this may not need to be, it may not be ready right away. This may take 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes for this box to actually spin up off the image. Now, again, I'll tweak this back off as I start to use this more. But I think a job batch is going to make the most sense here, where I might create multiple servers at a time, and then I need to listen, then finally whatever. So in the chat, if you are familiar with job batches, I haven't used them before. I'm going to look at the docs, but what I'm really curious about is the difference or the nuance between then and finally. Does finally run after then? Or would I just kind of batch these jobs up together? So we're going to build the jobs kind of individually today. We may get to the job batching towards the end of the stream or next time. Again, I think this might be 2 or 3 streams, but I think today it's tackleable to at least build these jobs and make the HTTP calls to the API. Now, again, a lot of this is a spike right now, and as such, I'm not necessarily going to write the test for it because I don't know the implementation. This may not be a job batch. It may be a job batch. So the testing for this is going to be completely different. So as such, today I'm just going to kind of like prove it out, and then I'll go back and backfill a test with the appropriate solution and put in all the little tweaks for the job backs off and retries and all that kind of stuff. So let's check out the docs. And again, if you know this in the chat, let me know. But kind of what I'm getting at here is, here's basically this job batch. And so what I can do in here is batch like a new, create new worker or something, some kind of job to do that. And when that is done successfully, then I was thinking I would do the listening job. And then after that, finally, is when I would kick off that other thing here. So what I'm looking at here is, even though this is kind of it's not a batch of jobs really, it's just a single job, this would kind of be in the batch, And then I was thinking this would be in then, and this would be in finally. This is kind of, again, lining that up with the docs. This is kind of what I'm thinking. So let me know, again, what this retries and back off. I don't know if finally is going to wait for that to be completed, or if it's just going to jump into this catch area because it failed. I'm not exactly sure. So we'll have to kind of see the nuance there. But at a high level, for right now, again, as a spike, this is what I'm thinking. So if you know there's a problem with this, do let me know in the chat. I am hearing some stuff, so let me see what people say. Daniel says, then is run first, finally is run finally. That makes sense. Job batch, yeah, I totally feel like job batches are the way to go here. Finally runs regardless of errors, so you might be careful of that. Yeah, exactly. What I'm worried about is because of the back off, if this worker is not, active yet, it's technically going to fail, but then it will retry a little bit. So I don't know if finally moves on without that. So again, this is still kind of a question mark. Maybe I just don't have a finally, right? Maybe I just have a very simple job batch that's create the box and then listen for it and just don't worry about anything else. And maybe I just go ahead and queue everything up, but that queue is not even running because the worker isn't available yet. So to tie this all together, again, I'm going to go ahead and keep kind of, brainstorming this, and then we'll get to the code here in just a minute. But to tie this all together, I was taking a look at listen for Horizon long wait event. So Horizon has kind of this long wait event. So this is one of the ways that I would dynamically spawn stuff up. Basically, if Horizon, and we can go look at my Horizon config here, Horizon, we'll see that I have all these different workers, and what I've done is kind of configure these waits. So for example, if automation is 30 minutes behind or has a long wait of 30 minutes or more, in this case, then I would want to listen for that event and spawn more workers. So this is basically when to spawn more, and then this is basically the job to spawn more, or let's just stick with how. There we go. So this is kind of like, this is how we're going to spawn more, and then this is when we're going to spawn more. So we're going to listen for that, and then the other thing too is basically listen for new Laravel tag, and this basically means run automation. So right now I can listen on GitHub when Laravel makes a new tag, and that's what triggers Shift to start running the automation for all the subscribers that are out there. So these two things are some more code that would need to be written that ultimately trigger this. They already trigger the appropriate job. So again, if finally doesn't behave in this ideal way for our use case, that's okay, because that's already getting spawned anyway. So we really just kind of need this background job to be fired off and create this stuff. So that's what I want to focus on today, are these two jobs. And then maybe I'll do a little work off stream to kind of test to see if batch then finally works the way I want it to. So I'm sure it works great, but it's just a matter of, does it really work the way I'm kind of like hoping it does or needing it to? Okay, so with that said, let's go make this create job for new DO server image. So I'm just going to jump in app jobs, and we'll just say something here like new file, create worker. And I don't think I don't want to get Docker running, so let's just like bring this up for now. And let's call this create worker, and its tries are going to be 1. Its timeout, I don't think I need any kind of special timeout, to be honest. There won't be any build. We won't have the get connection, and we don't have the SCS. So let's bring all this stuff off. The queue workbench would probably be internal. I kind of have like this internal queue that just, again, that way it runs separate from any shifts. There's no waiting or queuing that's happening. That's just all kind of built in. And then I think what we'll have here is like maybe the number of workers, and the default's 1. But for example, when I know automation is being run, I could construct creating worker and just go ahead and spin up like 4 workers, right? So we'll just do something like that. And let's initialize those properties. And that can be private, that's fine. Okay, so create worker and then handle, pretty straightforward. Let's just get rid of all this old stuff. All right, and so handle is where we're basically gonna make call to DigitalOcean to create droplet. DigitalOcean, all right, so let's go out and kind of check their API. So DigitalOcean droplet API. I think I looked at this the other day, but let's see if we can bring this up for a second. Come on, Dio, what's going on here? So we've got droplets, create a new droplet, create multiple droplets. So let's see what the difference is here. Names, name. Okay, so basically if I'm creating multiple droplets, I would give it names instead of name. And then one just returns the straight array, and then the other returns droplets. So based on the parsing of this, I would kind of need to know, you know, the droplets that are getting created. But for now, let's just focus on the single droplet. They've got a little call here. So 202 accepted, okay. And then I thought they had like a example response. Oh, my video stream is in the way. Let's close that for a second. Here we go. Okay. Let's borrow this. You know what I was thinking about the other day, and someone might have this, so if you know this in the chat, I think I was talking to Eric Barnes about this the other day, and I think he was saying that GitHub Copilot actually does this for you. But I was thinking in a future live stream of making something that takes curl and turns it into a Laravel HTTP request. Like, because a lot of these API documentations have curl as just kind of a base request. It would be really cool to like take this and like be able to paste it on some site, right? And like, it turns it into Laravel HTTP client. That'd be really cool. So let's rewrite it ourselves though in this case. Okay, so this would be like payload equals some kind of array. So let's start deconstructing this for a second. So let's just bring this in here and we'll take this out and let's try to do some fanciness here where we maybe turn this into stuff that is a little more helpful. So let's turn this into PHP. There we go. All right, that's a little better. And then let's get rid of this. Let's turn that off. Let's replace all these with just single quotes. All right, and then I'll just call this like shift worker. You know, this might have some kind of like, you know, date behind it. I don't know. But for now, I'm just going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't really matter. So NYC3, that's going to make sense. The size here is probably just, we'll just say something like 2 and 2 for now. And the image, again, we can use one of their image names for now, but I think eventually this might be something like, you know, shift image, you know, whatever, you know, hex code they have for the rest of that. But I think for now, again, I'll just dump it out with an Ubuntu key. I'm not going to pass the SSH keys because I think by default it automatically uses the one for your account. Backups false, that's fine. No user data, private networking, null. I don't think I need any of this stuff. Let's see what the defaults are for some of these things. So names required, regions required, size required, images required, keys are not, backups are not, it's false. IP version, IPv6. I imagine I may want that. Backups is false by default, that's fine. Tags are gonna matter. This, I have tags in DO, they're called worker. So as long as I tag this with worker, all like the VPN stuff is you know, set up the way I want. And so here, Droplet will be assigned to your account's default VPC for their region. So I'm already in NYC3 with some of these workers, so that's going to be fine. So really, the only to do here would be like use shifts image. So I'll have to figure out what the tag for that is. There must be an image ID I can go look up when I sign into DigitalOcean. So I'm not going to do that on the live stream, but this is just kind of a guesstimate of kind of how this would work. So here's kind of the payload, and now let's make an HTTP request. Although I heard in the chat, I have a whip repo somewhere with something similar. Yeah. Ryan, I feel like you got whip repos for about 7 different projects. Where's that? Were you the one working on that blade parser, or was that somebody else? Still waiting on that one. All right, so let's do HTTP post, I guess. All right, and you know what? Again, this is a cool opportunity because I haven't used Laravel's HTTP client that much. So let's get all this like bearer token and all that stuff working correctly. So we make a post, all right, and the post is going to go to here. So that makes sense. And we're going to hit payload. So there's our payload. Okay, so sending raw, I don't think we need that. I don't think we need that. Headers, I wonder if, I think you can say like, yeah, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Accept JSON, or is it the content types JSON? So do you do like post JSON? Is that real? No, I'm thinking of the testing layer. How do you, I think with basic auth is what we're gonna want. Or no, it's a bearer token. Is basic auth a bearer? Oh, there we go, bearer token, with token, perfect. All right, so this will be with token. So we'll say with token, and this is config services DigitalOcean token. All right, and we'll post that. So I think the last thing we need here is just to make sure that this is it accepts JSON. So, oh, let's get that final key there, and then, or it sends with JSON as JSON, maybe? What does this do? Body format, JSON, content type applicant. I think this indicate that the request contains JSON. There we go. That's what we want. Okay. So we'll do HTTP request. I kind of like this. Oh, Suri just thinks I'm talking to her. There we go. Don't do it, Suri. All right. I think this is legit. Kind of just like that first for some reason. Couldn't tell you why, but I do. So we're gonna make this request, and then we'll have a response. And then basically, we're gonna need a way to track this worker. We're gonna need a way to track this worker and potentially spawn another job. Yeah, okay. So basically, if response failed, then we would like throw some kind of new exception. I don't know what exception yet, but basically we would throw one. Again, this will all come out in the testing. But basically, we would throw a new exception, could not create worker. You know, something along those lines. Otherwise, it's successful, and now we would want to parse the response and get supposedly this returns, oh, it's on this side. Whoops, let me close the chat again. It's going to return a droplet, and we're going to need that ID. But again, this is kind of weird because it would, if I called multiple, it would potentially return multiple droplets. So we'll handle that later, but we'll do something here like to do handle multiple droplet creation. Okay, so otherwise, response, I guess you can get the JSON. It would be like droplet.id is really all I care about, to be honest. I think that would be all we care about. Yeah. We would just get this ID, and then that would be retrieve an existing droplet. There we go. There's the ID. So that's going to matter for the next one. Okay, so we would just, I think you can pass this a compound key. JSON decode this body. Yeah, it's a data get, so that should work. Okay, so this would be like droplet ID. And we would want to do something here. So now the question is, here's the question. Do we add a job to this batch, or do we stuff this into the cache to read for the next job? I don't know. See, what I was reading about in here is that chain, it's not a chain with an adding jobs to batches. Okay, so basically in load batch import, we could basically add another job. Collection times. What's collection times? Oh, it's doing it. I got you. It's doing it multiple times. So in this example, we will use load import batch job to hydrate the batch with additional jobs. To accomplish this, we may use the add method. We may use the add method on the batch instance that may be accessed via the jobs batch method. You may only add jobs to a batch from within a job that belongs to the same batch. The reason I'm thinking about adding the job because this feels kind of gross. What I would much rather do is something like, this batch add, new check worker status, and then pass it the droplet ID, right? I would much rather do something like that at the end of this job. That feels cleaner to me than something like, cache, set or put or whatever it is. I always forget. And this is like, pending workers, and then I throw in like droplet ID, and then my other thing has to read it. Like this feels way more like, declarative. Like I'm saying, okay, check the worker status for this particular droplet. I don't know. Tell me what you all think, but I feel like that makes a little more sense. Honestly, like, the more I think about it, the more this doesn't really even need to be a batch job. At the end of this job, I could just fire off a new worker fire off a new job to check the worker status. This job could just dispatch another job. I mean, this is why I wanted to spike it out, because again, you think there's these cool features, right? And there are, and you want to use them, and it's exciting, but you kind of get in here and you start looking at it, and like, there's really no reason for me to have a batch, because I kind of don't care about, if I'm always dynamically adding stuff to the chain, then why, unless I need those callbacks, maybe this is too much, right? So with that said, for now, I think the simplest solution would be to just say dispatch this, right? I think this would be the way to go. And let's just kind of like copy this job, and we'll go ahead and start making the next one. Then I don't have to worry about like failures and like all that kind of stuff. Like This would be like, you know, check worker. Is status, does status make sense? Check worker status? Is it just, I'm just like checking the worker. The status might be a little redundant. Let's just do this. Check worker. And let's take this back. There we go. All right, so we're gonna check the worker. We know this is gonna be like the ID. Let's just change this to ID, ID, ID. This is still on queue internal, that's fine. And we're pretty much gonna make the same call here. So this is always just gonna be like an individual kind of thing. So the payload here is probably not even necessary. Let's go take a look at this call. I'm hearing some stuff in the chat. Yeah, I'd probably just dispatch another job at the end. Yeah, it just, again, as you get in here, this just feels, again, it feels like it's simpler to do that than to try to make like a single job batch that can potentially add more things to the batch and then catch and then and finally. Yeah, I think it's too much. I think this can be a lot simpler, and I like simple. Okay, let's take a look at retrieving the ID. Let me close this chat again. So the curl thing is just a GET request with the bearer token as JSON, and its status, what we would be looking for is status active. So 401 unauthorized, 441 not found, 429 2 server error. Okay, so same thing with token. This would just be GET, and we would send it to this. It's actually the same thing, just with a little dot on the end of this ID. And if the response failed, then we could just say could not, you know, retrieve worker. Could not check worker. I don't know. Again, I'll fix those up later. And now what we would do is we would need to check the same thing. We would keep this, but really for now all we care about is status. Now what I need to know is the different statuses. I wonder if it tells us. Here we go. I wish it told us. Okay, so new, active, off, and archive. A status string indicating the state of the droplet instance may be new, active, off, or archive. What's the difference between new and active? Let's search for active. That's probably going to be like in 1,000 spots. Let's try Google. So DigitalOcean droplet status difference, maybe? I don't know. Nope. Nope. Let's throw in API. Let's see, what API? I don't know if this is, yeah, I'll toy with that off stream. What we'll do is we'll just say response, or sorry, we'll really just say if this is not equal to active. Basically, if that's not equal to active, I would throw a new exception, you know, worker not yet active or something. And again, I'm just putting these here for testing purposes. So now I think what we need to do is bump the tries. Let's give it 3 tries, and let's go look at some of that back off stuff, because I think that's going to matter. Yeah, exactly. I think new is probably just, that's what's going to be returned when you actually create one. And we could actually quickly look back at that. Let's quickly look back at that create example and see if their status is new. Just so I'm on the same page here. So we're going to create a new droplet, and when we do, the response is going to be the droplet itself. and the status is new. Yeah, so I agree. My assumption would be new is like, it's waiting, and then it's gonna say active. Okay, so let's go back to Laravel jobs, and let's, I think there's like a back off. Let's take a look at this and see what happens. Oh, that's strange. It didn't close my... Okay, sometimes your queue jobs will fail. Don't worry. Laravel includes a convenient way. Specify the maximum number of times a job should be attempted. Yes. Okay, when running a queue... So, okay, back off. Using the back off option, you may specify how many seconds Laravel should wait before retrying a job that has encountered an exception. Perfect. By default, a job is immediately released. But what I would want to do here is back off. And not only back off, but I think I would want to back off with decay. And I think you can do that by, exponential back-offs. Cool. You may easily configure exponential back by returning an array of back-off values from the back-off method. In this example, the retry delay will be 1 second, 5 seconds, and then 10 seconds. All right, great. So let's just borrow this. I wonder if you can't specify back-off as an int here. Maybe you can. Public back off, 5. I'm curious. It doesn't seem to be something that gets kicked down, so I'd have to go digging in Laravel to see if they allow that. But anyways, the docs say to use the back off here. Okay, so this job is going to get tried right away, which first of all, I don't want that to happen. It's pretty unlikely that this is going to just suddenly, immediately, within seconds be available. So the first thing I want to do is kind of wait. I think there's like a wait here or something. Let's see here. Dispatching jobs, delayed dispatching, perfect. If you would like to specify a job that should not be available, you may use the delay method when dispatch it, for example. Okay, cool. There we go, delay, perfect. You may specify that a job should be available. All right, so delay, and then what does this accept? The desired delay in seconds for the job, so it takes an int, so that's fine with me. So I think right away we would delay this 120 seconds. I am going to pass in an interval. Add minutes to. All right, cool. And then basically, I don't know if I would want exponential decay anymore, to be honest. I would just want it to back off to wait another 2 minutes. Well, let's go for it. Okay, so if the first time it fails, then it should wait another 120 seconds. And then if it fails the second time, it should wait, let's say 5 minutes. And at that point, this thing hasn't spawned for 10 minutes. So it retries 3 times. So the first time it fails, 120 seconds. Second time it fails, 300 seconds, so 5 minutes. And then the third time it fails, it would just die. There's no more back off. So that would be a total of 9 minutes, theoretically, that it took for this thing to spawn. And I just feel like that's pretty nuts. I don't, if it took that long, something's wrong. Okay, so I think this is pretty good. What else do we have on our scratch pad? So I think we're gonna not do the batch, and we're not gonna worry about spawning other jobs because there's really no reason. The whole point is when the queue has reached this wait time, that some of this other stuff would kind of happen, right? If anything, the listening to run the automation should be the one that waits. That would be the only time where I could see where batching a job would make sense. But in this case, for a long wait, I would just say, okay, there's a long wait, spawn up a new worker, it should be alive and catch up when it's ready. So let's go ahead and work on this, and then I think I think I'll stop it for the day right around an hour. So let's just build these listeners real quick. I don't think this will take very long. So I don't think I ever checked out a new branch. So let's do dynamic workers. All right, and we got some new stuff. So let's just git commit -m whip jobs to create droplets. Or well, yeah, jobs to create workers. All right, so that's not 100% complete yet. Let's focus on the listeners now. So I think if we go into the event service provider, we can jump up here and listen for a very specific event. So I think I will probably make a listener. Most of my stuff is just inline callbacks right now because it's pretty straightforward, but I think for these it probably makes a little more sense to listen for it. So let's go see what that exact job is made. So let's go Laravel, oops, I'm screaming. Yeah, I think I looked at these events yesterday. There's a long wait detected, and this is what I would want to listen for. And what this gets is the queue, the number of seconds it's waiting, and the connection, which in this case is always going to be Redis. I think they have some listeners too, so let's just maybe even just go copy one of these listeners. I think they have like a wait listener in here somewhere. Monitor wait times. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just spawn a new listener. I don't think there's anything in here that totally matters. We will use this though. So let's just say long wait detected. So I think if I remember right, it's like a key, and then it's the key of the event that you care about, and then I think it's an array of the listeners for this. So this would be like app listeners. Long wait detected would be like the listener, I guess, would just be like long wait. Or well, yeah, this is where I always get weird with naming. The event is long wait detected. That's cool, but what's your listener called? What does Horizon call them? Monitor wait times is your listener. This would kind of be like spawn new workers, I guess, if you kind of followed that naming convention. I don't know. Strange. All right, I'm hearing some chat. I'll jump in there just a second. Let me get this listener built out real quick. So let's just define a listener. This is pretty straightforward. And we could probably use some kind of type hinting and stuff here, but let's just dump this out real quick. I don't even have any listeners, so again, I think I might just end up making this a closure, but for now, we'll say listeners, and then what do we call that? Spawn new worker. And let's paste that, and we'll call this spawn new worker. There we go. So that should get wired up. Spawn new workers. Worker. There we go. Spawn new worker. Okay, so we're wired up now. We should be able to close that, and now we can focus on this. And I think the handle method gets passed in the event. So if we go look at monitor wait times, this, I would have expected that to get passed in the wait time, but that's okay. So we don't have any construct that we need, and I don't care about the doc block. So what we would really just have here is like long wait detected event, and that's what comes into play here. And here is where I would need to do, here's where I would need to do some like testing of that event, right? And let me go check the chat though, see what people are saying. Apologies for the question. Will you implement logic that will check to see if there's already a job in the queue that's waiting to spawn a new? Yeah, I think that's what we're doing right now. Jobs that are trying to spawn a worker for the same long delay. Exactly. Yeah. This is going to contain, I think, the logic that you're asking about. But these are good questions because there's definitely things to think about. So to that point, let's so first so like check. It's a queue that we want to spawn. Yeah, let's just call it, check that it's a spawnable queue, right? Because like if it's the internal queue, I don't care. These are like my jobs. They can wait. There's nothing pressing. Or if they're like an email job or whatever. So yeah, I think that's definitely something we need to do. And then to, I think your second question, which is something else, we would also need to like make sure we're not in the middle of spawning a worker, right? Because yeah, I wouldn't want to be in a scenario where like, you know, Horizon's firing this every minute or something, and while that thing's spawning up for 9 minutes, I just made 10 workers, right? And then those 10 workers have wait times, and yeah, so definitely I would want to like cap this out in some way. So I'm going to need to kind of track how many workers I have, and so that's going to be kind of interesting. Is I wonder if we can poll Horizon on like, hey, how many workers do you have in this queue right now? Or maybe that's just something I need to track. I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. Okay, so yeah, and then you know, if all that's good, then basically we would know that we would do something like what do we call that? Create worker, yeah, dispatch, and we won't pass it anything. So in this case, we would just create the worker and dispatch it. There's no arguments. It's just going to default create one worker. Maybe we create more if we somehow determine that the wait time's like, you know, 50 minutes or something. So if it just got flooded with like, I don't know, maybe this thing hit Hacker News or Laravel, Taylor retweeted it or something awesome, and like, yeah, the wait time's crazy, then like maybe more. So it's like to do, if wait time is massive, maybe spawn 2 workers or something like that. Max number of jobs of this type thing. I think there's a max number of jobs of this type thing for Laravel queues. I'm not sure. Okay, so going back to the long wait detected, if we go to events, I think we'll see that we're going to get all the information we need. We're going to get the queue and the seconds that we're waiting, right? So let's go kind of mess with that. So first things first, we could say if like not spawnable, we'll just use this word like spawnable queue, and we could pass in the event queue, then return. There's nothing to do here. So in this case, spawnable queues, maybe this is configurable, I don't really know, but I think for now, we could say something like queues equal, or well, this is really name, and this would return a bool. And queues would be like explode, just because I have multiple queue names. So in here, and then we would basically return, it'd be nice to actually collect this. So I could just say something like, if there's a match, but this isn't like a super big array in fairness. So I think what we could do here is like, We just want to see if there's an intersection between the queues that it's saying the long wait time is and then the queues that are spawnable. So I could really just do something like array intersect queues and then some kind of known set of queues. So let's just say something like subscriber and then automation and like paid. And then maybe something also to like the workbench. So basically, if you're one of these queues, then I would consider you to be a spawnable queue or one that I would want to go ahead and spawn a new job for. Okay, so that's good. And then the next thing we would need to do is probably do something where we say, let's just write some pseudocode here. So we'll say something like if like currently spawning worker. So if we are currently spawning worker, yeah, if we're currently spawning worker, then go ahead and return. And then if this, do I even care about like max workers? I don't know if I care about it. Well, I shouldn't say that. Famous last words. I was gonna say, I don't even know if I care if there's max workers. Like, just keep spawning them. Like, it's a high quality problem, right? But I'm not worried about there being a high quality problem. I would be worried about a developer, code bug where like I screwed up my logic and I just spawned like 1,000 workers. So let's just say something like spawned max workers or something like that, and then we would return. So let's just, again, we're going to pseudocode these. I don't necessarily know exactly how these are going to work yet. Maybe there's some Horizon thing I could reach into. If not, I could obviously track this myself in those other jobs with just a little cache option, right? Nothing to kind of worry about there. So if it's not a spawnable queue, return. If it's currently spawning a worker, then return. And if we've spawned max workers, then we would return. Now, I don't necessarily know. So currently spawning worker. The only way to know this is if I put something in the cache, some kind of flag. So we could just say something here like return cache get spawning new worker. And it's like, I think you can pass in a default. Yeah, default would be false. So if we're spawning new worker, then that's going to return true. Again, I could track this myself and just throw this tracking in those other jobs, right? That's not a huge deal. And again, this is where the testing is going to come into play. It'll drive out those additional pieces. And then finally, I would probably need to, let's just pretend and do the same thing here. So bool here, and basically like, again, this would be where I'd really rather leverage Horizon. I wonder if Horizon like has anything. Let's just take a few minutes to dig around Horizon, because I think we've pretty much got this nailed. Let's just kind of dig down in here and see if there's some way to know within Horizon, like how many workers or queues or anything else is running out there, right? Assets are current. There's nothing immediate check. Determine if the given request, no. Let's just kind of troll around down here for a second. We've got horizon. It's in horizon. Maybe there's like events, job failed, looped, worker process restarting, no. What's in connectors? No. Master super, no. What's in repositories? Master supervisor. What's in Redis supervisor repository? There probably is a way to know based on the number of supervisors that are being run, like how many workers are there. Because if you look in Horizon, like it knows the servers, the environments, I think it calls them, that are being run there. Like even if I don't put anything in the config, it'll actually pick up when I do spawn new workers. So it definitely is tracking that. So I could go look at like the UI and like work my way down to get what I need out of that. But I think for now, let's just do this. We'll do config get, we'll do like shift workers here or something simple, and the default's always going to be 1. And if that is greater than some kind of like config value of shift max workers, right? We'll do something like that. So if greater than or equal to, I suppose. So yeah, again, if I need to, I can track this myself. I'm already going to be putting stuff in the cache up here anyway for spawning new workers. So when a new worker is spawned, I can just increment that, and then I can also decrement it. But in my mind, it would be way cooler if I could tap into Horizon, because it's already tracking it. It's more reliable. I know the queue is truly like removed at that point. It's not spawning any more workers. It's not handling any more jobs. That would be pretty cool. So I think there's some ways to do that. Oh, array intersect. So we would we would do something like, this is kind of ugly, but we could do something like count here is greater than 0. That would return more of a bool. I mean, I guess I could cast it, but that's a little more appropriate. I may end up turning that into like a collection pipeline, because that's kind of nasty now. But again, all that can be refactored when the tests are actually being pushed along. So let's just recap this here, and then I think I'll probably stop for the day. So we have this listener that's going to get called anytime there's a long wait that's been notified by Horizon. Thank you, Horizon. So if it's on a queue that we don't care about, then we're going to return. If we're currently spawning up a worker, then we're going to return, because this event theoretically is going to be fired multiple times by Horizon, maybe every minute or 30 minutes or hour. I don't know. We can check that out. And then if we've already spawned the max number of workers, then we would return as well. Otherwise, we are going to create a new worker. And again, I may be able to do something here where like event seconds is greater than some threshold. We could say something here like, again, if this is over a 10-minute wait or something like that, then maybe spawn more workers. So if number of seconds is greater than that, spawn 2 workers or something like that. Or I could do some math. I could say something like, if divide that by 10 minutes, and if there's an hour, then I'm just gonna like spawn up 6 workers, right away, right? So again, very easy to implement that as well. So cool. I think this is a great start. This is farther than I thought I would get. So we've really actually built everything except for this, which again, I already kind of have this event anyway. If we go look at kernel, console kernel. This is actually just getting listened to, yeah, and check releases. So if I went and looked at that, like check releases, yeah, I already kind of have this. I don't need a listener. This is already kind of built out here, where we actually end up running the automation here. So instead of this, here is where I might, you know, possibly batch new workers, then run automation, right? So this would be kind of like the line that's in finally. So this is where I would maybe batch up and say, okay, run this job, you know, let it run the other job. And that might be maybe where I end up pulling off that job that spawns a job. And if I do end up deciding to use a batch, then I would just put that check status in the batch job. I would add it myself instead of spawning it as a single line. So yeah, I think that really solves all of these. So I think what I'm going to do is I will kind of test this out manually myself by just kind of running it locally and triggering these events myself, and then kind of seeing if it actually spawns up stuff, fixing that payload correctly, and then maybe next week I can either write a little bit of the tests or fill in the blanks on some of these things that we were unsure of, like the batching of then, finally, whatever. So I think this is pretty close. This is going to be awesome. And again, it's not necessarily needed, but I think this has been fun to work on. And I think that it actually will end up saving me money, which is cool. And it makes Shift in a way more resilient, right? It's even more automated, like Shift is automated itself, right? So it's just even less I kind of have to do, which is great because Shift is still just me. You know, I manage all of the code, the support, the marketing, you know, everything. I'm just kind of a company of one. So as such, if this can kind of handle itself, then I don't even have to worry. Like during release week, I can enjoy, you know, LayerCon Online. Maybe I even get back to speaking at LayerCon Online. You know, I don't have to sit there and worry about the new release and the site coming down and all that kind of stuff. So cool. Well, thanks for joining live. Hope you all enjoyed. Again, I'll do another stream probably on this, like a part 2, maybe probably next Wednesday, but if not, actually, you know what? I'm out of town next Wednesday, so I may do next Tuesday. We'll see, but the next stream will probably be this, and then if I haven't found one or Ryan hasn't finished it himself, maybe I will, in a future stream later in the month, work on that curl to HTTP converter. That could be cool. And obviously I have a use case for it. So, all right, with that, thanks for watching live, and I'll see you all next time.